Anakin Skywalker spent over 20 years as Darth Vader, and during this time, he was completely alone, his mind constantly fueled by the pain and sorrow of his past. But what if Darth Vader sought out something? No, someone to fill the cold void inside of him, and adopted a son. Let's start the story 10 years after Revenge of the Sith. The Empire's might is rising, and they have control over a large portion of the galaxy. Vader is at the height of his power, and he ruthlessly commands the Inquisitor program to hunt down, capture, and kill all surviving Jedi around the galaxy. They've been extremely successful, and with each kill, Vader's power grows. The Empire is tipped off about a potential Jedi survivor named Kento Marek on Kashyyyk, and he mobilizes the Inquisitors immediately. They arrive on the planet with a large Imperial presence and begin scourging the villagers in close proximity to where the Jedi was reported. Vader stepped forward in the center of an untouched village and reached out with the Force and knew the Jedi was here. All around him, people were running into their homes, away from the terrifying figure of Vader. But he started grabbing people with the Force and raising them into the air, cutting off their windpipe and flow of oxygen into their body. The fear emanating from these people would no doubt draw the Jedi out. It would be impossible for him to resist helping these people. And Vader was correct, as the Jedi, a middle-aged male, burst from the closest hut and pushed Vader back with the Force, which freed his victims from his Force choke. The Jedi ignited his blue lightsaber, and Vader did the same in response. They locked lightsabers, sharing blows back and forth. This Jedi was strong. He was no doubt a Jedi Knight, but definitely not a Master, and not on Vader's level. Vader disarms the Jedi and kicks him back into one of the wooden huts. He walks up towards him, but as he enters, he feels another presence in the Force. Another Jedi is here close by. Could it be his master? Vader Force chokes the Jedi and orders him to tell him where his master is, that he can send someone far more powerful nearby. But the Jedi scoffs, telling Vader that the dark side has blinded him, that he killed his master years ago. But Vader knows he's lying. He can sense another presence in the Force close by. But it doesn't matter. Vader tells the Jedi he will share his master's fate and goes to cut him down. But before Vader can, his lightsaber is taken from his grasp, pulled away with the power of the Force. He turns around, astonished to see a boy, 10 years old, has taken his lightsaber from him with the power of the Force. And Vader realizes who this is. It must be the Jedi's son. But most importantly, he's the source of the powerful presence he felt nearby. The Jedi screams out in fear, telling his son to run, but Vader has lost interest in him, breaking his neck with the Force and turning his whole attention towards the child. But as he does this, a squadron of stormtroopers walk in, and the officer watches the scene unfolding. A boy with Vader's lightsaber, and he commands his stormtroopers to fire on the boy. But as he does this, Vader takes back his lightsaber, blocking the incoming fire, and cuts down the stormtroopers. The child watches in shock, but Vader turns back to him, and tells the boy they must leave, that more will come for them soon. The boy takes Vader's hand, and together, they rush out of there back to his ship and leave Kashyyyk. Vader was able to toy with the boy's memories, changing the perception of the events that had transpired. He changed it so it seemed the Imperials came in and killed his father, but then Vader swooped in to save him from his attackers and they escaped together. Vader took the boy to Nur, the site of the Inquisitorial headquarters. He did this for two reasons. Firstly, because he would train the boy himself to become an Inquisitor, but also because he could hide in plain sight from the Emperor. He decided the boy would be called Valic, and in time, he would earn a new name when his training was complete. Together, Vader and the boy spent hundreds of hours together in the training facilities. He had grown much under the tutelage of Vader, and over 2 years had passed. He held his practice saber with determination, his stance reflecting the years of training in the Force. Vader observed him carefully, his every movement scrutinized, as nothing more than perfection was allowed. Vader parried the boy's strikes, testing and pushing him to his limits. But Vader was happy with his progress. His connection to the Force had grown, and with his training, he would become a powerful Sith. He instilled into the boy the tenets of lightsaber combat, and he favored Form 5 Dim So, but he also integrated aspects of Form 4 Ataru to combine a dynamic and aggressive fighting style. He used a combination of Form 5's brutal strength and power with the acrobatics of Form 4 to make use of his aggression, and also allowing him to blend with the swift, unpredictable movements, making him a dangerous enemy to any type of opponent, whether a Jedi, bounty hunter, or stormtrooper. He primarily uses one blade, but carries a second, in situations where he might need more versatile offensive capabilities. As the years went by, Vader and Valic sparred countless times, cultivating his lightsaber skills, and Vader was pleased with his blend of raw power and agility. Valic had created various unique combos that Vader hadn't seen before, and with time, he would become a formidable force and versatile fighter. But his connection to the Force also grew, and his accelerated training reminded Vader of himself in his previous life. Force powers came easy to him, Force push and grip became second nature, but there were more uncommon techniques that he became proficient with. Force repulse, which Valic could emit an explosive wave of Force energy to devastate enemies and objects nearby. Vader had read about the technique, but he had never seen anyone use it. It was his ultimate weapon. However, it consumed a ton of Force energy and would only be used when absolutely necessary. He would go to learn other techniques such as Force lightning, concealment, and ultimately Force rage. However, a profound change occurred within Vader when he started training Valic. After Padme's death, Vader had lost everything, and he had resided in the lonely empty void that was his soul. Only his hatred and sorrow was left, and he became content with that, using it to fuel his desire for revenge and power. But after he began training Valic, he started to feel a connection to the child, and a bond slowly began to form. Valic reminded him of the dreams he and Padme used to have of a family, where Anakin would train their children in the Force, and Vader couldn't help but feel tied back to those dreams. Vader spends more and more time with Valic, and he begins to fill the empty void within Vader. Even though he was not his true blood, the connection felt real and tangible, and he started to view Valic as the son he never had. Conversely, as his training progressed, Valic had grown to see Vader as his true father, a figure of power and strength, the man who saved him from the tyranny of the stormtroopers on Kashyyyk. He had accepted the memories that Vader had implanted, believing that his real father had died in the Imperial assault and that Vader had saved him. Valic was loyal to Vader and devoted to his father. As Valic's training progressed, Vader began to bring him on every mission under the mask of one of his inquisitors. With every battle, every conquest that they fought together, their bond grew, and so did Valic's power. However, the secrecy of their bond was crucial. Palpatine remained unaware of the depth of their connection, seeing Valic only as another inquisitor of his empire. Vader had taken care to shield the boy from the Emperor's gaze, never showing favoritism to him in public and treating him as he would any other inquisitor. But to Vader, he was much more. This goes on for close to 10 years, and father and son had together eradicated most of the Jedi around the galaxy. Valic's power under the tutelage of Vader was almost equal, but it was his mastery of Sith Force powers and his unique lightsaber style that made him different. Through Valic, Vader began to enjoy life. He had a purpose, someone to live for, someone to whom he felt a true connection, and with whom he could see ruling the galaxy with in the future. However, everything changed when we reached the year of 0 BBY, when the Death Star is destroyed, and it was not destroyed by a mere rebel, but the emergence of a new rebel soldier who was Force sensitive. Vader sensed that the rebel was Force sensitive, and after the destruction of the Death Star, Vader tasks Valic to find him and bring him before him alive. Valic accepts immediately, eager to please his father. He uses all the Imperial equipment at his disposal and begins hunting the rebels down. Valic came into contact with many rebel bases, but none of them housed the rebel he's looking for. But he finds a breakthrough as he interrogates a rebel leader from one of the small camps he's found, who told Valic that the rebel who destroyed the Death Star is currently leading a mission around Ryloth. This is what Valic needed, and he hid there immediately. His ship enters the atmosphere to find the Imperial forces engaged with the rebels attempting to escape. Valic circles around in front of the rebels in his nimble TIE fighter and manages to board the rebel ship. The ship was on the brink of destruction, but he could see the rebel he wanted was there. And in the distance, he laid eyes upon the rebel, and he was determined to capture him. He rushed forward, lightsaber ignited, which draws the attention towards him, and Luke ignites his blue lightsaber in response. They lock blades, trading blow after blow, attempting to crack each other's defenses. But the ground beneath them shakes, and the ship is about to split in two. A roguish smuggler with scruffy hair calls out to the rebel, yelling out his name, Skywalker, and tells him to jump now, in which Luke does, making his escape, causing Valic to abandon his hunt. Valic travels back to Vader and kneels in front of him, telling his father that he failed his mission, that he couldn't capture the rebel. Vader tells Valic that this is most disappointing, but they will find another way. However, Valic tells him that he did learn one thing, the rebel's name, Skywalker. Vader froze in place at the mention of the name, Skywalker. Skywalker was a relic of the past, and this could not be a coincidence that the Force-sensitive rebel shared his name. Valic could sense the shift in Vader and asks his father whether he recognized the name, and Vader half turned, contemplating the truth in his mind. Skywalker, the boy who destroyed the Death Star, must be his son. The Jedi Obi-Wan and Yoda must have hid his true son from him for all these years, and now they've turned him against him. But he will not let this happen. He will find his true-born son and bring him over to the dark side. He turns fully towards Valic and tells the boy the truth, that Skywalker is his son. This was a physical blow to Valic. For the last 10 years, his only family out there had been Vader, and their bond was iron strong. However, there was in fact a true-born son of Vader out there, and a spiral of emotions well up within him. Vader tells Valic that they must find him, and exits the room. Vader didn't see any problem telling Valic the truth. He still cares extremely deeply towards him, and this hasn't changed with the existence of Luke. However, Valic doesn't know this. Luke is his competition for Vader's love. Vader's own ignorance didn't realize this. He underestimated the bond between father and son, since he never experienced it himself. For the next couple of weeks, Vader focuses entirely on finding Luke, putting in all his effort to find his long-lost son. But through this, he couldn't help but ignore Valic, who was hurt by this. The jealousy began to well up inside of him. He felt a semblance of betrayal, that he was being ignored, forgotten, and abandoned, cast aside for Luke. His jealousy towards Luke was growing inside of him. He knew an adopted son could never mirror that of a true-born, and decides the only way to ensure he remains Vader's favorite and only son is to eliminate Luke himself. He follows Vader's orders to find Luke, but what he'll do with him when he does is completely different. However, neither Vader or Valic found or heard about Luke for months, until Vader got a tip from Lando that Luke and the other rebels were found on Cloud City, where the eventual confrontation between Luke and Vader took place. Vader revealing to Luke that he is indeed his father, which only motivates Vader in wanting to find him. Vader shares the same state of mind towards Luke as he does Valic. In his mind, he still loves and cares about Valic just as much as Luke, and his focus has been on finding him. He wants his whole family to be together, himself, Valic, and Luke. After Cloud City, for a year, Luke was nowhere to be found. However, Valic had secretly been setting up connections of his own. He began hiring spies all around the galaxy, on various systems and worlds who all recognize the identity of Luke Skywalker and are given the orders to contact him if they hear anything. This is dry for months until he receives a report from a member of Jabba's palace's band that Luke Skywalker has sent a message to Jabba and stated he will be visiting there in person soon. Valic jumped at this opportunity. This is exactly what he needed, and he heads off secretly to Tatooine without informing Vader. When he arrives, the execution of Luke, Han, and Chewbacca is midway. He sets his ship on autopilot and jumps out, landing on the same ship as Luke, and they stand opposite each other for a second time. Valic decides to ignite a second blade and utilizes his acrobatics more in this fight, but he could feel Luke's power had increased since the last time they met. He was strong, which only angered him. He couldn't penetrate his perfect defenses, as Luke cut one of Valic's hilts in half and kicks him back. Valic spits out a tooth and looks up at Luke in frustration. He yells at him, telling Luke that he himself is Vader's true son and has been all along, that Luke will never fill his shoes, even if he is his true blood. Luke stops in confusion, not expecting the words that have come out of Valic's mouth. Luke learned a year ago that Vader was his father, yet Valic just called Vader his own father, and Luke started to think, could Valic be his brother? He deignites his blade and goes to walk closer to Valic to talk to him, but Luke was blinded by Valic's true intentions. He attempted to draw Luke in and strike when he got close enough, but Luke begins to hear a voice, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi, telling Luke to feel the Force, to feel the true intentions of this Sith warrior who's attempting to deceive him. And right as Luke gets close enough, Valic jumps towards him with his lightsaber drawn. However, Luke was ready, guided by Obi-Wan, and pushes him off the ship with the Force and sends him descending towards the Sarlacc pit below. Valic goes straight into the Sarlacc pit, but as he does this, he uses the Force to keep its mouth open and prevents hundreds of teeth from crushing him. Above, the execution fails. Luke, Leia, Han, and Chewie escape and leave the planet. But Valic inside the Sarlacc pit ignited his lightsaber and cuts it down from the inside as the Sarlacc screams, but there's nothing it can do. Valic cuts his way out and makes his way back to the surface. After his encounter with Luke, the frustration, anger, and jealousy had changed his temperament. He knew Luke's strength in the Force would no doubt garner Vader's favoritism, so he decided he would change his plans completely. He leaves Tatooine and goes to meet with Palpatine himself and tells the Emperor the truth about his relationship with Vader, but also Vader's obsessive search for Luke. The Emperor was extremely intrigued by this and was surprised he could have been deceived for all these years. Vader is telling the Emperor all of this for one reason, because he believes with Luke he will never have Vader's full love and attention ever again, and because of this, if he can't have Vader, then neither can Luke, and decides he'll kill Luke and Vader himself. This joyed Palpatine. He could sense that Valic was no doubt powerful, and he could use him in his plan to turn Luke Skywalker to his side. He offers Valic a place by his side if he succeeds, and Valic accepts, but secretly, Palpatine has other plans for him. Meanwhile, the Rebel launch their assault on the new Death Star, led by Luke, Han, and Leia, who attack Endor and attempt to destroy the Death Star's shield generator on the planet's surface. However, Luke quickly sensed that Vader had come to the planet and knew his presence there was only endangering the mission. Because of this, he surrendered himself to Vader, and Vader knew that the time had come for himself to take over the Empire from Palpatine. He and Luke have the power to defeat the Emperor, whether or not Luke turns to the dark side or not. He is sure he will fight with him against Palpatine regardless. Luke's resolve was strong, and knew he wouldn't turn to the dark side. His main goal was to redeem his father and bring him back to the light, and if this had to happen through himself killing the Emperor and severing the connection between master and apprentice, then so be it. However, Vader wishes Valic was there to join them, and he was completely worried about what had happened to his son. He could still sense his presence through the Force, but was fearful something bad had happened. But nonetheless, Vader brings Luke in front of the Emperor, who was excited to see his future apprentice. But Luke refused and told the Emperor that he would not turn. Vader could sense the power in Luke and knew if they attacked Palpatine now, then victory would be theirs. However, as soon as Vader goes to do so, he feels a wave of heat pass through him as he looks down to see a bright crimson blade had stabbed him through the back. He falls down to the ground and looks up at his attacker to see none other than his adopted son Valic. Luke turns towards Valic and screams in rage, igniting his own green lightsaber and rushes at Valic, and the two engage in a climactic duel. Luke attacks Valic with murderous intent. Valic had ruined his hopes at turning his father back, redeeming him through the Force, and for this, he must pay. Luke displayed his mastery of Form 5, but also integrated aspects of Form 6 into his fighting style. He was an aggressive counter-attacker, waiting for Valic to strike before responding with overwhelming strength. Valic's ferocity grew. His desire for revenge against Luke was immense, and the two brought out the best in each other as they fought with murderous intent. Meanwhile, Vader struggled up to one knee, and he could feel his life force was slowly leaving him. But what was more painful was the pain he felt watching his adopted son and his true-born son fight. All he wanted was for them all to be together as a family, and this confrontation is the last thing he wanted. Meanwhile, Palpatine was laughing with a face of joy. He had organized this confrontation. He told Valic to attack Vader when he was defenseless, and then himself would help him defeat Luke in a duel and assist him in taking his revenge. However, the second part to his proposed plan was a fallacy, and he never intended to help Valic defeat Luke. Actually, quite the opposite. He was attempting to have Luke cut down and defeat Valic in anger, in a desire for revenge for his father, in order to bring Luke down the dark path, turning him to the dark side and have him become his apprentice. And it was working. Vader looked over to Palpatine, to the joy on his face, and realized that this entire scenario, this confrontation, was ultimately through Palpatine's manipulations. He had set this up, manipulated Valic into helping him, and then turning Luke to his side. Vader saw through Palpatine's plan. However, he didn't have the physical strength to stop him, but his mind and strength in the Force was still sharp. He focuses on his children intensely and casts out a wave of Force energy, with the target being both Luke and Valic's minds. The wave of Force energy involved a Force projection, and used this to stop both of them in battle and share his thoughts with them. He tells them the truth he's uncovered, that they're both fighting exactly like Palpatine has wanted. Valic attacking Luke, knowing he cannot defeat him, and is simply a vessel for Luke's revenge and initial steps down the dark path. Vader ends the projection as he's reached the limit of his strength, but it was more than enough. Luke and Valic stop fighting and look at each other, both with the realization that they're not each other's enemy, that they've been manipulated by Palpatine, They both turned their attention towards the Emperor, who was confused by this action, but then realized Vader must have done something. He must have probed their two minds and stopped them from attacking each other. In his rage, Palpatine goes to use Force Lightning on Vader, but Vader acts before he could and uses the Force to hold the Emperor in place. Valic and Luke act in a flash, speeding across the battlefield to simultaneously slash their blades through Palpatine, whilst Vader held him in place and the Emperor slumped to the ground, his mind full of confusion about how the situation turned on him so fast. However, this would be the last thought in his mind, as life completely left him. Luke and Valic rush over to Vader, who they can sense is slowly dying. They put both their hands on his shoulders, attempting to pass their force energy into him to heal his wound, but Vader waves them away, telling them both that there's no hope for him, that death is certain for him now. However, he has one dying wish for Luke and Valic to stay together, to treat each other as brothers, to be there for each other, to become brothers, and work together to bring order to the galaxy. Valic's gaze met Luke's, and the resentment he held towards Luke started to dissipate. But Vader turned to Valic and apologized to him, telling him that the darkness he instilled in him was wrong, that for so long he had been consumed by the darkness, and only now, with both of his children by his side, with the threat of their deaths at Palpatine's hands, had he seen clearly. He tells them they can be different, that they mustn't let the darkness divide them, but work together to become brothers. Luke, sensing the shift in his brother Valic, reached out and put his hand on his shoulder. They were no longer enemies, but were brothers, and promised Vader they would protect each other, and together they would be stronger than ever. Tears welled up in Luke and even Valic's eyes, who had been hardened by their years of training, felt the emotions take over him. Vader took his helmet off, as he gazed upon his two children one last time, with his own eyes, as he let out his final breath for the last time, and his body became still. Luke and Valic left, as the imminent destruction of the Death Star was upon them. They were now unified together, brothers, with a purpose left to them by their father. They would face challenges, Valic's dark path, but would face them together. Valic would join back with the rebels, where Luke would introduce him to Leia, and although she was initially skeptical of his past as Vader's son, Luke emphasized the role Vader had left to them, to help restore the galaxy as brothers, and that as she, their sister, was a part of their mission. Although it would take time, Leia would slowly open up to Valic and start seeing him as a brother like Luke did. In the years following, Valic and Luke would restore the Jedi Order, training Force sensitives around the galaxy in both aspects of the light and dark side of the Force. This was one difference from the Order that came before them. They didn't solely practice the light side of the Force, but implemented some aspects of the dark side that they deemed necessary to achieve balance in the living Force. Together they helped the New Republic defeat the Imperial Remnant, and helped restore worlds heavily affected by the galactic conflict back to their initial glory. They spoke of their father often, sharing stories Luke learned from Obi-Wan and what Valic had experienced himself. They knew they were doing their father proud, determined to carry out his final wish, but ultimately did this together as brothers. If you enjoyed this video, you have to watch What If Vader Raised Luke or What If Luke Joined the Imperial Academy. Don't forget to check out Fantasy Sabers and our Halloween deals, the best on the market. Let me know what you thought of the video in the comments below, and may the Force be with you.